we look at some old maps, because the satellite image below just shows that the town is in the middle of land, while the old maps show that it's on the coastline, because there's a little harbor, and in the Netherlands we tend to make polders of everything that's wet, so it means that now there is a polder. So again, if you would just look at the satellite image, it doesn't explain why a harbor town would be in the middle of the land. So you have to know some knowledge about the history. And also you can imagine, now we'll not deal with all the details because then I have to bore you with Dutch history, but then there's a historical reason why it started there. And economy-wise, it used to be there because peat was found there, and at that time, and we talk about the 1700s, peat was the fuel for the houses in Amsterdam. So the peat was found there and brought by ship to Amsterdam. But today there's no peat left, and they just made it in a kind of tourist town. So again, you have to know all these elements from different fields of knowledge, and you have to reason together to bring this into being able to answer complex questions. Now again, this of course has been a very simple example, and if you think of climate change, it's much more complex and we don't have answers yet, but then you can imagine what role visualization could play. So I'll now take you a few steps back to be able to explain this exploratory capacity of maps. So first I just look at maps as you might know them. So you might have some data, in this case a table of population data of certain towns. And if you think of presentation, first of all we know exactly what kind of data we have. Census data, we study the nature of the data, and based on that we can easily decide which type of map has to be used, because that's all in our textbooks. So the result is of a good visualization of the data is the best map you can think of. And in presenting data through maps, the emphasis is on the design of those maps. So this table would change into this map. Proportional point symbol map, the size of the symbol immediately tells you how many people live in those areas. You might have seen maps like this before. Now, what about exploration? Again, it's slightly different, the starting point. Presenting, we knew exactly what we have, but in case of exploration, we don't know exactly what kind of data we have. And we have certain ideas, because we deal with lots of data, and we know maybe where they're from, but we would like to find out about the nature. So, what will you do? Well, you would like to explore, you would like to find out, do I see trends, do I see patterns? And based on those patterns and trends, you might set up a kind of hypothesis. So, if you think about exploration and maps, it's not necessarily the design, but it's their use, that you can ask questions. It also means that you will not necessarily use a map as we see here, proportional point symbol map, but that you also would like to express the data in different graphic representations, because those different graphics might trigger your mind, and you might say, hey, this is a view, different perspective, and suddenly you might see a different pattern. So let's have a look at a few examples. So we've seen this one, but how about a 3D view? In this case, the height of the geographical unit, in this case that's the municipality, that is the amount of data. So you can immediately see which one has the most data. Another thing you might notice is that some municipalities might be hidden behind the big ones. So it means that if you select a 3D environment to display your data, you require an interactive environment. Remember, I said that we borrow from other disciplines, human-computer interface, scientific visualization, and those disciplines already developed tools to do so. So again, if you're familiar with Google Earth, without being able to rotate the globe, you will not see everything, so there you can imagine that's also valid for this situation. Another way could be just to display it in a diagram. You just order the municipalities on alphabetical order, and the height tells you about the number of people. But of course you lose your geographical link. because there is no idea where it is. It tells you all about what, but the where is gone. Still, it might reveal certain things, because it could also, you could play with the diagram and order them from the highest to the lowest. Again, you could do different things there. You could even select a different type of diagram. I don't say that in this particular case this is a useful display. It's just to show you that it can be done differently. And another example is what we would call a cartogram. Now this one is very much related to the map of France, which I showed you before, because there again the geographic space has been deformed into a kind of attribute space. So the topic decides the size, and here what we see is that the municipalities have the size of the number of people live in their municipalities. So if we have a very small town, like for instance, think of a country like Singapore, very small, but lots of people live there, so on this map it will become much bigger than the surrounding countries, for instance. And that also happens here on a local level in this area. So this tells you about the difference from visualization for presenting, the traditional cartography you could argue, and exploration, and that goes towards geovisualization. And that topic I would like to address next. Okay, what is geovisualization? Well, it is all about including the methods and techniques from our domain cartography with those from other domains, so that we can benefit while we try to explore. We can benefit from the methods and techniques, the interaction options, the database knowledge from those disciplines, and integrate it in our discipline in the GI sciences. Now, for those of you who really would like to read about it, this slide also shows you a book which tells you in very much detail all about this. If we then again look at maps and this geovisualization, then the maps are there not necessarily to present. Of course, any map presents data, but it's mainly there to stimulate thinking. So you look at certain patterns and you might say, hey, that's strange, I didn't expect this. Or, hey, I never knew that next to a pattern in the south, a similar pattern is observed in the north. And so again, you look at the graphics and you get ideas. And you might discover relations and patterns which you might have seen before.